per day. I live on the infinite plane. I ain't playing no games. I'm on a different plane. I live on the infinite plane.
Okay, so we are live, June 11th, 2025, the IPS Deprogram Part 1. This is going to be a two-part thing today. Probably 10:30 p.m. tonight we'll come back and we'll follow up. But to start, I just want to go over recent developments, and I want to talk about this concept, which we often describe as the MSM plus the MSM box, the worldview, the world stage is how we generally describe it. But I want to really emphasize that what we're talking about here is a media ecosystem. That's what the world stage is. It's the world view that represents the vested interests of the power elite and their monopoly over worldviews. And it's just being exercised through media, entertainment, all the political drama, but it's uniform. It's a singular ecosystem. It's monolithic. And the symbol of the monolith perfectly encapsulates this. That's what it actually symbolizes. And the thing I'm describing here is the synchronization between entertainment, the political narratives, and the fake news psyops. Because I don't think there's a meaningful distinction between the entertainment propaganda and the news propaganda. We're talking about selective bias, special interests, influence operations, psychological operations. And our perspective here at Infinite Plane Radio is inclusive of media fakery. And if you're still in the box, you don't know about media fakery. You might think media lies or fake news means a bias, but you may not understand the extent. Case in point, January 13th, 2025, even people who have figured out that it was a trick can't really separate it from the context of the MSM box. They can't see it as, okay, if this is true, if he faked this, then it necessarily is a larger orchestration. They can't go that far. The people in the box will always miss the psywar for the psyop. They will miss the forest for the trees. So let's go ahead and just get into this concept. So yeah, I was talking about a month ago, we started mentioning this buildup. Ever since Final Destination Bloodlines came out, which opens up with this spectacular destruction of the Space Needle, it's really accelerated this conversation because so much has been building up. And I noted, hey, look, the space station is turning off their tracking website on 6/11. Just a coincidence, right? And then we draw attention to the movie series, The 100 on Netflix, and how it relates to Final Destination because one of the characters is the same. He's a protagonist in both. But in The 100, Season 1, Episode 13, the space station explodes. And that aired on 6/11. So we've just been, for some time, noticing these broader patterns, which regularly and with specificity foreshadow faked events. And that's the key here. It's not revelation of the method, like dark sorcerer is going to do bad things, so they got to tell us about it, which is what truthers generally think. There's two camps here. Truthers will say the reason for all this entertainment foreshadowing events on the world stage is because of lower forces, lower powers. Lower powers being dark occultists, evil wizards. But human beings, but they're doing evil, so they're foreshadowing it in media, if you think that makes sense. That's been the general dogma among Trutherville. That's the explanation. And there's another group, the Synchromystics. And they say, oh, no, this couldn't be done by man. The consistent, eerie coincidences between entertainment and what's happening in the world and these drills, that's the result of a higher power, the simulation, or higher than man powers. Not really all that specific, but higher. So attributing it to higher and lower powers has been the go-to explanations until we came along. And we recognize, no, this is actually a singular monolithic ecosystem, a closed information system, and the world stage is the model that we're all supposed to share. It's the consensus model. But the pattern is pretty deep. So just general background here. Final Destination, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, Mountainhead. These are some popular movies out right now. In fact, Sinners is one of the, I think it's the top performing in its genre of all time. So the fact that these movies relate to what's happening on the world stage is relevant because these are the popular movies, the popular books, the popular video games. Well, Mountainhead is about, well, when it takes place, it's got this Elon Musk character. Deepfakes are getting so real that people can't tell genuine footage from simulated stuff. Just like after 10/7 or during the whole Ukraine thing, Ukraine-Russia, people were conflating video game content for actual war footage. But now it's worse because anybody can create it. Well, this is the theme in Mountainhead, but it takes place against the backdrop of chaos spreading across the country. And it's a popular movie. It just came out, and if you watched it and you said, okay, let's just suggest that this might be propaganda foreshadowing and preparing us for this, I guess, demonization of the techno oligarchs and their attempts to get close to power and everything else. Well, we're seeing it happen right now. Just like we've seen various movies come to life. It's just a routine thing at this point. Thunderbolts, I mentioned Thunderbolts because I saw the trailer. Before the trailer for Fantastic Four, before I watched the movie where the space station explodes. The Fantastic Four trailer had an explosion above a city. It showed Space Needle-like structures. And it had a blackout, the world go into a blackout. Before that, it was Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts' trailer had stuff falling from the sky. And taken together, there's a uniform message between these two trailers and the movie. And then on the real world stage, the Space Needle celebrates the opening of the Skyliner. The first visible milestone of the $100 million that were put into this thing for renovations in 2018. And the movie, which contains the Space Needle, is about the opening of Skyview. So we've been following this stuff. Well, I noted Thunderbolts. I noted I noted the Fantastic Four. Since then, a cover of Empire magazine has Fantastic Four. And over the EMP, it has a Space Needle. How interesting. Since this has come out, I was noting that Thunderbolts, the movie Thunderbolts, has a character who has hair like Tulsi Gabbard. We're talking about the National Intelligence Director. And I'll show you why this is significant. This was actually pointed out to me by Cubstar in our Discord server that this particular character, the bad guy in Thunderbolts, unleashes the Sentry, which is a void that blacks out New York and turns people to shadows on the floor. So now, here's why it's significant. This character, dark hair, white streak, unleashes something, ties into a blackout. Well, just today, this actually came out yesterday, but let me play this video. A character in a movie just happens to look like Tulsi Gabbard. We're talking spitting image. And Tulsi Gabbard just went to Hiroshima. So she's giving this talk where she's describing the horror of it all, of what a nuke could do. And now there's also contemporaneous talk about Iran having its hands on such a weapon. But I'm going to play a clip from Tulsi Gabbard describing Hiroshima. And I just want to point out that she looks just like this person, the bad guy in this film. And there's an obvious overlapping theme here. And so what I'm pointing out is that this is consistent. This is a consistent thing. It's routine, the synchronization. And here's what she actually said. She said, National Intelligence Director Tulsi, she says, well, this tweet is about amplifying World War rhetoric and nuclear Armageddon directly ahead of the June 14th military parade. Planned strikes on Iran just as predicted. So this is the story here. Iran, nukes. Pentagon believes Iran is actively working towards a nuclear weapon, says Senator Tom Cotton. So these statements made by these politicians, in my view, need to be considered alongside what we see in the movies, as they all build up the consensus world stage perspective on the incoming fake events. And I emphasize fake. And what we have been following is this build-up for a domestic violent extremist version of a 9/11, with the target being Seattle, the epicenter, the Space Needle in particular. So today being 6/11, and as we've talked about Just like, okay, there are some people who might mock this, but explain the predictive foreshadowing for 3/11, for 9/11, and for a myriad of other events. Like, this is a consistent thing we've noted, and we've taken it further, and we've noted the alignments between real-time releases of movies and the events, to where you couldn't even say we're cherry picking or we're lucky or it's just Texas sharpshooter fallacy and we're drawing from all kinds of content and just circling the matches. No. We're talking about the big major studio releases concurrent with news events, which shows that they're either completely psychic or they're producing propaganda. And all of these fake events are scheduled ahead of time. You know, these things are not spontaneous. They're not playing the Illuminati card game. What are we going to do today? No, these are planned out long in advance. The Space Needle, when I started noticing this thing, I said, hey, look, this was in 2018. They just dumped $100 million into it. The Century Project. And we had already noticed how the $100 bill, Century 100, the penny, the cent, it's been consistently associated with this. And in many examples of resets or even the literal destruction of the Space Needle, like in Sonic the Hedgehog, they flash the Benjamins, the $100 bills. So the Century Project, the $100 million, is what gave us this new facet, this new elevator. So today's the day we're watching the Space Needle. Not that we're making predictions based on something arbitrary, like some gematria calculator. No, there's reasons for what we're saying. Anyway, today it says thespaceneedle.com. We know you love Panicam, and so do we. But Panicam is getting some much-needed maintenance and love right now. We promise to get it up on top of the Space Needle as soon as possible. So today, 6/11/2025, you can't track the space station if you go to the NASA website, and you can't go to the Panicam on top of the Space Needle. Just another example. What I say, you have to look at this holistically. It's a media ecosystem. If you still think entertainment and the fake news events aren't connected by a singular source, you're in the MSM box, MSM plus at best, but you're in the box. You're not integrating it. And that's what we're doing here. So I'm using the phrase media ecosystem to explain how we arrive at our conclusions about what is real or fake and the utility. It's not enough to say something's fake. You have to say, well, why? What's the purpose? What's the agenda? And all of these different agendas fit very neatly into the political horseshoe, activating the sides, as we're witnessing right now. Here's another example. The Mexican naval ship hits the Brooklyn Bridge, and a woman named America dies. So just on the face of it, it's like we have many examples with the bridges and the boat, other symbols we could invoke here, but just on the face of it, big Mexican flag, destructive event, and America dies. So fast forward from that event to right now, and it's like, okay, what would you call that? God sending a message, the simulation, a video game, a coincidence? If it was a normal person would say it's a coincidence, but I'm saying no, that was a scripted fake event, especially when you dig deeper into the entire scene. I think there's quite a bit of symbolism that would suggest here that it's a scripted event. But again, just pointing out. By the way, Strawberry Moon is the lowest full moon in 19 years. June's annual Strawberry Moon, the lowest in 19 years. Blap says, anything go down with the Space Needle? Well, they just shut off the camera. They're doing maintenance on the camera, so here's what Tulsi Gabbard said. I recently visited Hiroshima and stood at the epicenter of a city scarred by the unimaginable horror caused by a single nuclear bomb dropped in 1945. What I saw, the stories I heard, and the haunting sadness that remains will stay with me forever. And again, Tulsi Gabbard, with her signature white stripe through the hair, looks just like the bad guy that releases the Sentry that blacks out New York in the movie that has an airborne or space weapon, blacks everything out, and it preceded the opening scene of Final Destination where the Space Needle blows up. So you see here, there's a consistency here. It's all contiguous. It's all connected. But it's not all connected in some mysterious, inexplicable way that you have to say, well, it must be aliens. Must be dark occultists. No, it's intelligence agencies. It's the programming class. It's the psychological warfare that some people don't even know is happening. That's what I'm saying. Forest for trees, people miss the psy-war for the psyop. Any truther can raise their hand and say, hey, look, I see a psyop, guys, look. Any truther can make that soy jack face and wag their finger with their bug eyes and point out a psyop. But very few can actually recognize that it's actually part of a psy-war and understand the extent of it. It's like they think the only fake trees are the ones pointed out to them by their favorite influencers. No, it's not quite like that. It's faker than you think. Doesn't mean reality's fake. And that's one of the main traps, is people start seeing fakery and they think, oh, reality is fake now. No, you're not a video game character, even if you think you are. So to all you video game characters out there, I think you're missing the plot if you're not looking at the media ecosystem for what it is. And the Truman Show is a map. It's not the territory. All right, let's see who's in here. Portal Complex, Dominic Spiato, Verkjun. Happy June 11th, everybody. This is kind of a holiday. Clockwork 113, Math Powerland says we all gonna die. Generally, I would see that makes sense eventually, but not at the same time. But these days, I'm open to the possibility that death is a hoax. Penguin on a Raft, Copaesthetic, Michelle K, King Ravana, 777, Andrea X322X, thank you for joining. Busy56 says, Portal Complex, are you a critical Jew theorist? That would be, I use the term woke right now because the people hate it, but if you do have a scapegoat that runs the world conspiracy theory and the world's asleep, you got to wake them up to it, that's kind of the woke position, but replacing the bad guy. Because right now, we're seeing it in action. The riots, the people rioting and looting. Well, the looters aren't really political. They're opportunists. But the marchers, the people who support the fight against the ICE and all that, that's coming from a left woke position that sees the systemic oppression of whiteness. So whiteness or Jewishness, these are the two major scapegoats, left and right side of the political horseshoe. And anybody who's arrived at such a conclusion is, quote, woke. And wokeism is defined as having what you call critical consciousness. So once you come to this conclusion and you recognize that this is the main oppressor, I am oppressed. One, that's a slave morality. Now I'm oppressed. But two, once you've arrived at that, everything that you see goes through that filter, through that lens. And the problem with it, for example, if you're woke left, you're not just anti-white. Now you're anti-male. Now you're there's so many things that you're attached to. Similarly, if you're woke right, well, now you're probably racist and sexist because that's intrinsic to that worldview. So one is anti-family, one is for traditional morality, one is for women's rights, but that's toxic femininity and they're anti-men. The other side is pretty much misogynist. That's why I don't take sides. If you're inside of the political horseshoe, you're in the box of MSM. You're programmed. The Beheaded One has said, the real Timcast worth watching. Yeah. Well, I'm not getting paid $100,000 a month by the Russians to do this either. What's up, Let's Go? Mask off, checking in. Panicam sounds like Panic Cam, says Ollie Goering. Ooh, that's interesting. Panocam. There is some significance to this because we're talking about fear, psyops, and the panic-demic is what I called it. And the One World Trade Tower, we were talking about the symbolism of it. It looks like a big syringe. We know the word syringe comes from syrinx, which is Pan's pipe. And pan is where you get the word panic. Because I think you do panic if you see some individual who's a goat from the bottom half with horns shrilly piping and chasing you through the woods. All right, let's continue here. Portal says it's the Soros effect. Well, see, George Soros, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel. These are characters on the world stage who are both saviors and villains. If you're on the left side of the political horseshoe, your programming will tell you Elon Musk is a villain. If you're on the right side of the political horseshoe, your programming will tell you Elon Musk is a hero. Bill Gates is the villain. George Soros is a villain. They can't be both villains and heroes. And Soros is a mainstream alternative media euphemism for Jews, for Israel. That's what globalist means. When Alex Jones says globalist, that's a mainstream version of critical Jew theory. Alex Jones is as woke as it gets. Red pill is woke. That's why I'm saying refuse the pills. Because there's a lot built into it. You can't just take one. I believe this particular issue is accurate. I just believe in chemtrails. Well, no, you can't take this out of the context because these are belief clusters. And that's how they compartmentalize everything so people don't notice. They don't want you to see your own programming. Mango Penguin says, I'm actually tired. Estevan says, long live IPS. Estevan says, fix me a plate of nothing burgers with a side order of middleman to God. Well, it hasn't been nothing burgers today. If we're talking about the build-up towards this scenario, the play is escalating. In fact, just by it's sort of surprising, but it's like look at Mountain Head and look at the streets right now. And on the 14th, which is in 3 days, the No Kings protest. They say there's 1,800 centers where they're going to be screaming and marching. All right, let's see here. Again, that was Tulsi Gabbard. For some reason, the clip wasn't playing on X. Let's try it again. Speaking of X, I think Musk reunited with his ex. I think he and Trump they talked on the phone, and he vaguely apologized for the Epstein thing. So Musk was lying about the Epstein thing. He didn't really know anything about it. Well, if he would lie about that, then maybe he would lie about other things. Makes me wonder, maybe space is not what they say it is. Does anybody here still believe in outer space? I mean, I believe in up. I see it all the time. I believe in what's up there. But do you believe in space travel or the way that it's represented? Enoch says the green pill. What is the green pill? Is that reptilian? The only pills we're taking are white pills. But the problem is, I don't believe in the dynamic of handing out pills. You're not a Pez dispenser. You're not here to wake people up. I mean, you might feel like you are, but that's wokeism. That's a trap. The only thing you can do is deprogram yourself and then sync up with other people who are similarly deprogrammed and outnumber the programmed people. You see, we've been outnumbered this whole time. We haven't been able to build an alternative consensus as far as an approach to what's happening and some shared level of understanding. And now we finally have it. And we just have to be strict. Like if you're Mandela affected, you can debate us, but it means that you're admitting a few things. If you say, I'm Mandela affected, okay, then you fall for loaded questions. And you're programmable with the misinformation effect, which is a government mind control, I think, experiment. I think Mandela effect is a mind control experiment, utilizing the misinformation effect. Math Powerland says, all smoke and mirrors, they even fool the elected. Well, absolutely. And the pill approach, though, the red pill, blue pill dichotomy is false because the red pill takes you from the dream into a nightmare. Now you're awake. And I think it's funny, they say, oh, we're awake. It's the Great Awakening. How is that different than being woke? J-pilled is what they call it, the J-pill. Now you know who runs the world. Okay, well, the J-pill, that's no different than saying it's well, it's the same. It is the same, quite literally, as the left woke idea that you're woke to the structural racism, and I'm oppressed by it. So which is it? And it's such a mirror, and it's been roundly exposed. That's why I've been using the phrase woke right, because it has been totally exposed. And I talked about this for a long time, because I said the world stage is built around the political horseshoe, and if you take a stand on any issue, any anti, you're automatically lumped in with all the other antis. which is why I say you have to be anti-anti. I'm like, I'm not pro any of these things, but like I'm against anti-vax. Anti-vaxxers don't like that. Well, like I don't like woke. I don't like this shrill propaganda mule running around trying to get us to do what? To get mad at Bill Gates and George Soros. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not in this alternate reality game. I'm on the outside. I'm a critic. I'm an alien anthropologist. Mango says, some would call Tim a bitter pill. Yeah, anybody who says that is psychotic. Like, look, we're telling you the truth. That nobody's dying at these events. Like, hey, no kids died. And they're like, they get mad. Nobody jumped out of a burning tower on 9/11. They get mad. Like, people get mad at the good news. I'm like, what's wrong with you? This is the best news ever. And they don't even want to look into it. They don't want to hear it. And that's the awakened people. The normies don't care. One of the best examples I have for this is after 10/7, I was talking to a normie. And when I say normie, I just mean blue pill, MSM plus, world stage, Truman in a Truman show. And I don't bother waking these people up. And he said to me, did you hear that the terrorists beheaded 40 babies? And I said, yeah. Really nice weather today, isn't it? And then we start talking about the weather. Never went back to the stack of severed baby heads. And that's because it was just a headline, shallow, really just meaningless statement. It wasn't attached to anything concrete. So they live in this sort of a dream where they accept it's real, but they're apathetic to it. The woke people think it's real, and they want to go riot. They want to call the other side genocidal. But I'm saying it's all fake. So I don't care about these high body counts, these death tolls, these terrorist reports, if they're, and this has been since the time we've been studying it, if they're generally just hoaxes. See, I'm not attached to it. And the reason why we're not attached is that we don't react real time. The mainstream version of things is the headline's printed, believe it, react to it. The video's posted, respond to it. And you can see the damage all the time. I'm watching people on Twitter retweeting videos from 2020 and acting like it's real, getting agitated. It's like, this is old content. Neat Chop says he's skipping D-Live. How many people go to D-Live? I could turn it back on. I could actually probably upgrade for tonight. Enex says, color theory is deeply embedded in the elite symbolism, especially in the movies and shows. The connection between red and knowledge seeking is frequent. Interesting. Well, I would say everything is Kabbalistically encoded. The colors, the numbers, the words, the sounds. And it's in everything. It's in the music. We talk about the halftime shows being really, truly just the Gnostic Catholic Mass. Barely even occulted. Barely. Okay, let's move on. For some reason, I'm getting nothing but blank screens on X. So let's go on here. So here's a completely rational person in a terrorist outfit holding a Mexican flag and Trump's severed head. A little unhinged. The man who attempted to assassinate Trump was reportedly having a conversation with someone who wasn't there. So I was talking about how Thomas Crooks had been associated with the Joker. He looks like the Joker, the Riddler. How he looks like the Riddler, and he's saying Ave Maria when Batman asked him, what did you do? Referencing the fact that Gotham was getting bombed and was going to be underwater on 11/6. Well, Trump was shot at 6/11, so at 6:11 p.m., 84 days after he was shot, they had a moment of silence in Butler. And during the moment of silence, someone sang Ave Maria. And I thought, look, there's just another Riddler connection. And there were many of these things. But interestingly here, the attempted assassination comes amidst other recent acts of sarcastic violence from Luigi Mangione, to the New Orleans truck attack. It's a difficult environment for law enforcement to operate in because these attacks straddle the ideological spectrum. Crook's political beliefs remain a complete virtual riddle. So the media was describing Thomas Crooks as an enigma. You know what the Riddler's name is? Enigma. Yes, Enigma. And he was described multiple times as an enigma. Well, now they're saying that he is a riddle. His political views are a riddle. This is a consistent thing with the different shooters and their associations with the Joker. So recently, I've been talking about this show called The Madness and how it relates to Civil War and how it relates to Disease X. Madness refers to the content that radicalizes the right wing into violence. That's the madness. Well, there's a video game called Death Stranding. Leo Pirate posted it from 2019, which features heavy concurrent programming for the lockdowns. It also stars Mads Mikkelsen, who has JFK's assassination as his birthday. But there's a terrorist group in the game, and they set off a nuke. And they're called Homo Demens, which means madmen in Latin. Madmen. Again, the madness, the show has this Musk-like character who basically steals the election for the fascists by financing Nazis on the internet. That show, well, that show has a number of elements that we're living through right now, but the madness itself is a reference to the mind viruses that drives these people to ideological extremes. So here you have a game about these characters called the Madness, responsible for the nuke. Skyfish says, okay, I'm trying to get off the same exit as the first ICE protest in Compton. Solid 60 cops with riot gear. Interesting. Actors in waiting. A lot of people are suggesting that, I'm seeing a lot of people open to the idea that these things are staged. Tracy says, I'm not woke, I'm aware of discernment and some common sense. Well, do you have a critical consciousness about oppression and oppressor? Like, if you believe that you are oppressed and that there is an oppressor class, like class warfare, it's an interchangeable bad guy. Different ways they frame it. In fact, environmentalists are woke because their critical consciousness says, now we live in a world where we recognize that our lifestyle is destroying the world itself. So we must modify our lifestyle in order to mitigate the damage that we do. Religions are generally woke in this sense. Sinners and the saved and the need to save people, wake people up. So what I'm really talking about here with wokeism itself is a radicalized mindset programmed into you because you've been programmed to give too many Fs about stuff that's fake. Like if you're woke to chemtrails, well, you care about something fake and you're probably mad about it. And you're probably really froth at the mouth when somebody doesn't believe you because you're helping the oppressor. But by the way, if you believe in chemtrails, I don't want to see you get on a plane ever. Otherwise, you're complicit. You're now a chemtrailer. You're a witting participant. You help finance a terrorist vehicle. And you chemical warfared your countrymen. Space Chimp says, do we have eyes on the Space Needle? Well, they just turned off the panic cam. They said that they're doing maintenance on the camera. AngstG says, this is Mexico. Is that a current thing? No. The Aztlan crowd, La Raza, this has been around for a long time, but there is it's like Tartaria. It's this idea that there was this empire that was basically stolen, buried, covered up, and it was some kind of utopia, but that this is the reconquest. It's not new here. I've always heard this stuff. There's local activists for it. I've heard people describe it. And I always thought of it as kind of this quasi-new age, almost mystical idea. And the guy who came up with this mystical land of Aztlan, he was a propagandist. For some reason, I think he was a Nazi. I have to look into it. But his book was called The Cosmic Race. And it described how all the different races would merge into one perfect race, which they called the Cosmic Race. And it was very much inspired, I think, by Theosophy. And basically, The guy was, it was like pseudoscience at best, but I thought it was absurd. He talked about Atlantis and Lemuria. Very bizarre claims that one race in particular, I think he said blacks were evolved from Lemurians, who are egg-laying hermaphrodites. So anyway, you can look it up, The Cosmic Race. It came out in 1933, I think. Bizzo56 says, oh yeah, Hideo Kojima, who created Death Stranding, is a huge metascripter. He did all the Metal Gear Solid games, which have predictive programming. Metal Gear Solid 2 has 9/11 predictive programming and Patriot Act. Yeah, the games are huge with this stuff, and thank you for that lead. We'll look into this particular video game creator. And there's quite a lot with the whole Escape from LA, the Snake character that ties into Trump, the one eye thing. It's all pretty packed in there. Let's see what else. AngstG says, I've been to that Home Depot before. Okay, the Home Depot is where they kicked it off, and it was the ICE raids. So these ICE raids and the reaction to it, which people believe is spontaneous. Protests against ICE ramp up in Baltimore after the unrest in LA. Just a headline. Newsom versus Trump. So Synchromorpheus brought this up because many have, and this is all in the meta script, how they attach various, like Elon Musk has been associated with Iron Man, Tony Stark. Well, weirdly, Trump is basically Batman. This was very big with Q people. But Newsom has also been connected with Joker. And right now we do have this Joker versus Batman dialectic in play. Antifa and anti-ICE activists have barricaded the garage exits at the federal building in Seattle. Department of Homeland Security have arrived on scene, got mobbed, liquids were doused on them, and they were forced to retreat. I was looking at this trailer for the show called Welcome to Derry, based on Stephen King's It. It's a new series coming up, and it had Derry High School, DHS, and beneath it, Bert the Turtle. Says, drop, the drop, what is it, duck and cover. Duck and cover, Bert the Turtle. Fascinating stuff there. In fact, we've connected Bert the Turtle. If you're not familiar with this cartoon, it's a duck and cover character. It's from back when duck and covering was from nukes, not school shooters. But the Terminator 2 sequence, where Los Angeles gets nuked, focuses on a turtle on a playground. That's one of these props that has been consistently noted in a lot of the... It's one of the symbols. Where's Barack Obama? We need someone with presidential authority to remind Americans in an eloquent way that this is not normal. I saw this piece in The Atlantic by Mark Leibovich called Where is Barack Obama? It's like, where's Superman? Like they're basically putting it out there. We need a savior. We need someone to oppose Trump. And this is intriguing because I've been really focusing on this Trump versus Obama dialectic, which is something that is frequently brought up in this context by Jurassic Liars. And it's for good reason. Obama, who is a metascriptor, think Leave the World Behind, he represents 1619, Trump represents 1776, and these are two competing worldviews that are representative of the fringes on the political horseshoe left and right. And Obama being brought up in this context as the one who could save us from Trump is just noteworthy. The subtext here, this story, the subplot is ongoing. And it exists in many movie representations where the Trump character gets shot. You'll find often the same actor or the same basic character opposing him. This is a consistent pattern. So just a quick refresh here. Megalopolis, Trump is Caesar Catalina, who survives an assassination attempt, blasts his right eye. The mayor sets it up. And the mayor is played by Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Sidewinder in the most recent Captain America. who opposes the president, who gets shot at while he's at the podium. So you have these repeated themes of the person representing the president, Trump, getting shot at, and the shooting orchestrated by this antagonist, played by the same actor who represents Obama in these different capacities. Another one, Tom Wolfe's novel was made into a Man in Fool. Well, in A Man in Fool, there's a Trump-like character. They turn it into Trump, and he's opposed by the mayor, another mayor, like in Megalopolis, the mayor of Chicago, an obvious Obama character who orchestrates his downfall. But this is a repeated theme that exists through movies going back to Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing that we've observed. And recently, Trump moved Obama's portrait out of that part of the White House and put a portrait of himself with the fight, 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 and the blood on his head. So again, it's just hinting at something. And Trump got his start in politics by calling out Barack Obama, and his legitimacy was put into question because of the birth certificate. So he started with the whole birther thing back when it was the Tea Party, before he turned him into MAGA. Again, SpaceNeedle.com says, we know you love Panicam, but it's getting much needed maintenance. We promise to get it back on top of the Space Needle as soon as possible. All right, let's see what else we have. I'm going through your comments. Kevin Mooring says, New York is Gotham, and Trump's birthday in DC Comics should be interesting. Well, his birthday, yeah, actually you're right about that. See, we live in multiple overlapping fictional universes. The world stage itself, this Truman Show, is a fictional universe. It's a literary construct, basically. It's a closed information system. Like, you don't get into Disneyland if you're Warner Brothers. You don't go taking characters from one fictional universe and putting them into another where it wouldn't make sense. Star Wars would never cross paths with Star Trek. I mean, I guess it's slightly conceivable, but probably not. These fictional universes are mostly mutually exclusive, but what happens on the world stage here is they use the fictional universes in entertainment to introduce propaganda that ties in to what's being introduced on the world stage, which is why I say we live on planet Netflix. How many times have we seen something on Netflix manifest on the world stage immediately, or it foreshadows it? Busy56, they just announced Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys died. He was pretty spooky. Is he the one that was friends with Charles Manson? 777 says, in Street Fighter V, there's a character named G, like the square and compass symbol, and he was the 33rd character added, and is the politician and antagonist of the game. You know, I saw a motorcyclist plowing through some cops in Los Angeles, and she was wearing a green jersey with a 33 on it. Not saying that means anything, but kind of fits a pattern. It makes me think. My go-to thought on this is fake. Today is June 11th, says Matt's Gotta Know. The day it is rumored that the beast will rise from the sea. YouTube has this animation run when you open the app. The sea life appear to be fleeing from something, and the human follows into darkness. I have not seen this animation, but it is as described. Tony Seruga says, something serious is unfolding. The U.S. is evacuating its embassy in Baghdad. Non-essential U.S. personnel leaving our airbase in Qatar, UK, and other nations. Halting Persian Gulf shipping, crude oil prices up. This is something in Ohio. Chemical chaos. 5,000 gallons of toxic nitric acid leaked from an explosive plant in Ohio. Entire town evacuated. 30-mile no-fly zone activated. What's going on in Zaleski, Ohio? Toxic airborne event. Laura Loomer says, massive cyber attacks across the Middle East have started. Iran is attacking Kuwaiti and Jordanian military servers. Now, this may not mean anything, but Milo Yiannopoulos, who was Ye's campaign manager, former editor of Breitbart, I don't know how in the know some of these people are but he's tweeting, and he sent this tweet. And he's being hypothetical. Day 336 of being told the Marines are deployed and California has been obliterated. 4/5 of Las Vegas is in ruins and nothing is getting in or out of Oregon or Washington state. A tornado of ash and flame licks the sky where Seattle once stood. Just an unusual tweet at a time like this. Yep, Ohio, here you go. Evacuations underway. Nitric acid leaked from a Austin Powder Red Diamond Industrial Explosives Factory in MacArthur. It's a chemical reaction spitting out toxic brown gas. 4,000 miles of airspace shut down. So this is Ohio. Austin Powder Red Diamond.
Holy fuck. Shit, holy fuck.
All right, let's move on. Going through tweets. Luigi Mangione shares 27 things he's grateful for ahead of his federal murder trial. We may get into that. Luigi was a manufactured character right out of Joker, right out of the madness, introduced to the world stage just as the hatred for Musk and Trump would be amped up. And right now, on Saturday, the No Kings protest is about Trump and Musk. And we're talking about class warfare and Luigi's followers dressing like him, just like Joker's followers dress like him. Kill the rich, theme in Joker. Trump goads the troop into booing Governor Newsom and the mayor Karen Bass and attacks them as incompetent. So here's Trump at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And this was yesterday, because today he's going to be at the Kennedy Center watching a play with his wife. The JFK Performance Arts Center. PsyOp Sidecar says, just got here. Anything in the news? Quite a lot. A lot of it is nuke related. Where is Barack Obama? I'm going to skip that one for now, but we'll get back to it. There are people talking about Kamala Harris getting back into the White House. A bunch of loony fringe left, but they're kind of mirroring the Q movement. But this narrative that Musk tampered with and stole the election, which he admitted to, he said Trump wouldn't have won without me. This is one of the main subtexts in the madness. Kevin Mooring posted, a reporter asks, why are U.S. dependents of military personnel being evacuated from the Middle East? Trump says, you'll have to see, thank you. Okay. So again, if you look at the media ecosystem holistically as we do, you recognize that it's related. Entertainment, the political stuff, the drama on the streets, and it is all meshing into this storyline here. And it is escalating as we lead up to the military parades on Saturday, the 250th birthday celebration of the American military. The tanks have arrived in D.C. And I've been looking at videos. Yes, there's a bunch of tanks. Copaesthetic says Civil War just declared in Seattle. Well, that's what I'm suggesting here. That's pretty much like they have the DHS is there right now handling the mobs. But yeah, thank you, Evac 311. Austin Powder, Ohio, like Austin Powers, Dr. Evil in the Space Needle. I knew there was something there. Because Austin Powers was just in the news because Mike Myers has been outed as a CIA operative, an agent in some of these Diddy documents. But Austin Powers has Dr. Evil, who is Jeff Bezos, who is Nimrod, builder of the Tower of Babel. The Space Needle, Tower of Babel symbolism is actually bolstered by this quite a lot. When they show Dr. Evil's lair, JL likes to point out, it actually translates, it's an anagram for Elvis. But Dr. Evil, his lair is the Space Needle. And so here we have the Austin Powders plant in Ohio explodes, major evacuation, toxic airborne event. And it does relate symbolically, Austin Powers. It does tie in at least the headquarters of Dr. Evil. And the fact that it's Ohio is really congruent with much of what Jurassic Liars has spoken of. Dinah Southhorse says they're evacuating because DJT closed the borders and flights from lots of Middle East countries. Well, undoubtedly, things are escalating as per the program as we have been analyzing it. Sort of like how I saw the trailer for Sinners. And I said, watch, because I didn't know at the time that Sinners was going to be one of the biggest and best performing horror movies of all time. But when I saw the trailer, I said, hey, look, white racist vampires. There's going to be some kind of racial psyops. And then we have the Austin Metcalf getting stabbed, and the video is going to be leaked soon, I think. But Carmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf, and then you got Shiloh Hendricks raising money on her racial slurs compared to Carmelo Anthony raising money after stabbing this Austin Metcalf. But Sinners had the subtext. The main part of it was that the Klan were vampires. And at the end of the movie, the Klan gets mowed down. So that's another aspect to this as well, is that we have this storyline of retaliation against this organized oppressor. But the Sinners also featured the main character, Michael B. Jordan, as a twin. And one of the twins dies bleeding in the other's arms in this racially charged film. Well, what happened with Austin Metcalf? Well, he actually died in his twin's arms. And afterward, Jake Lang, a January 6er, tried to organize riots around this. He tried to kick off a White Lives Matter. He tried to turn Austin Metcalf into some kind of a white Trayvon Martin. So there's, anyway, these parallels. And this followed with the attack by Rodney Hinton, because his son, Rodney Hinton Jr., was killed by the cops. And then Rodney Hinton kills a cop who has the birthday of 6/11, the guy who retired after 33 years. Let's Go says, Cope posted this from X. Alert, Civil War. Seattle Police Department sides with insurrection against the federal government and declares war on ICE. They will not cooperate with ICE. Interesting. Yeah, I saw some examples of this where some places it seems like the cops are sympathetic, like we saw with BLM. But that would be a plot twist. 777 says, Russian vids, they live truth. So what is it? Is it Russian vids? Is it they live truth? Or is it Ukraine vids? I thought he changed it in solidarity with Zelensky. But precursors of Trump's and Musk kayfabe pretend fighting? Yeah, undoubtedly. And let me add to this. I watched The Mountainhead. The main character is Elon Musk. And there's this point where he's going to talk to the president on the phone. And he downplays it to his bro friends. He's like, oh, he's just a dude. Like he's playing down how nervous he is. But the movie is about how there's this attempted power grab by these technocrats by getting close to the president, and there's a spat. They're all stabbing each other in the back. Meanwhile, Trump and Musk have this very public breakup. So I saw that and I thought, okay, that movie mirrors the breakup with Trump and Musk, but it takes place against the backdrop of America burning, of total chaos worldwide. And what are we seeing right now? Are we seeing Mountainhead come to life? Are we seeing Thunderbolts, Final Destination, and Fantastic Four about to come to life? Like, what movies are in play right now? Are we in the Marvel universe? Are we on Planet Netflix? I mean, which one is it right now? It's like all of them. It's overlapping. We're multi-dimensional. There's so many intersecting worlds here. It's a crossroads. The Bread and Circuses has everything covered. And these are all essentially compatible. We can coexist. You could be MSM Plus, Red Pill Junkie. You can coexist with a QAnoner praying to JFK. And you can coexist with the wokey left and the dreaming normies. It's all compatible because nobody's objective. As long as everybody's in subjective solipsistic states and they're passively consuming media, automatically believing from their chosen source, the system will continue to function perfectly as it seemingly always has. Penguinotti says, I think a giant Elvis wave will occur in Turkey tonight. You mean a tsunami or something? Do you all know about the wave? And I think it's called, let me see, I think it's called Hinkle Stadium. In sports where people in the stadium will stand up and do a wave and everybody waves. So the wave, and I was doing, okay, this is interesting. I was doing some research into this Seattle 11.3.311 thing, and there is this PBS documentary number 113, which they've since deleted, and it was called The Bombing of Seattle. And it was about these drills at a stadium in Seattle. I think it was called Hinkle Stadium. But let me see if I can pull this up. Where they were doing drills with blimps in a stadium. But anyway, we were looking at the origin of the wave. And I think it might have originated at a stadium where they were doing these drills. I'll have to pull this up. Unfortunately, they pulled the documentary. But there are different claims to when it actually started, but there are some indications it may have started at this particular stadium, which might have some significance. XG says, yeah, state agency taking sides against the federal government. Yeah, certainly an escalation. Let me bring this up. I'm going to go to... does anybody have a source for that? This Seattle Civil War. Now, I planned on doing this today. We split it up. So in about an hour or so, maybe even what we've been on for, yeah, about 1 hour from now, I'm going to take off, and then we're going to come back at about 4. I'm sorry, about 10. So we'll have 4 total hours of content today. Girl says Seattle is a city of zombies. Agreed. Seattle protesters blocking ICE vans from leaving. Penguinati says, tonight reminds me of 11.3 when the Space Needle in Turkey fell instead of Seattle. Yeah, that was really bizarre. We talked about this before. 11.3, 2019, we're watching this Space Needle and this other thing had burned instead. Isn't Seattle known for giving free needles out? Like, isn't that one of their main things? There's like needles all over the streets, people picking up needles and putting them into 55-gallon drums. Just probably not a coincidence. Girl says the needle is the perfect avatar for Seattle. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's not coincidental. These are symbols, but they have deeper underlying significance. And it's not a coincidence that the Elvis movie opened with, was it the Space Needle? Because it's an international hotel. But it has 3 columns like a Space Needle. It just doesn't have the UFO on top. So it's like it's waiting for the top. Sort of like a pyramid waiting for the capstone. And it's significant. The capstone on the pyramid, the top of the obelisk, the capsule on the rocket, or the UFO on the Space Needle, these are analogous symbols. But in the Elvis movie, they had the Starship Enterprise on top of the 3 pillars, so it looked like a Space Needle. And then it goes through a video montage, and it focuses on a needle as they inject Elvis with something to wake him up before he hits the stage. So you have a combination of these symbols overlapping with Elvis, which is like, sounds strange, when you don't have the full context of it all. But these are reoccurring and repeated themes. Like, I think it's significant that the Mexican naval ship had 3 masts that hit the bridge. And then America dies, and the ship sinks. No, it doesn't sink, but it crashes. Linda Curtis says, JLB is live too, so is Faco. Well, what I want to point out here is that I provide steel man arguments. So if somebody says we live in a video game or simulation, I don't just dismiss it like, okay, Super Mario. I'm like, no, okay, I'll accept your premise here, and let me just reason through it. So I did a lot of research into simulation theory, and what's the guy's name? Musk steals the guy's cadence whenever he tries to sound like super smart. I think it's Phil. Is it Ferber? The simulation guy. And simulation theory is not a simulation theory, by the way. The guy's name is Paul. The person who really popularized the simulation theory as it's presently understood. And his explanation for why we should believe we're in one is kind of weak. His claim is very weak. It presupposes quite a bit. Here it is. Paul Davies and the simulation hypothesis. Hypothesis makes more sense than theory. A universal computing machine could create artificial worlds capable of simulating their own, leading to an infinite nesting of simulations. But anyway, I'm not so much interested in that particular metaphysical model. But people noticing fake news and connecting it with the eerie parallels in media have been trained to see that as evidence that we're in a simulation. So if you believe we're in a simulation, then all of the media synchronicities that we're calling out here are evidence of a higher power working through man. If you're a simulation theorist or synchromystic, you must therefore concur that everything that we're pointing out here is essentially divine. It comes from a higher than man source. And that kind of makes me, in a way, close to Sim, because I'm able to directly translate the messages from the Sim on a consistent basis. And we have so many examples. The 713 thing with Trump is one of our best collections of this. And so that is their claim. My claim is that premise of attributing to a higher power coincidences in media that line up with fake events, to me, that's the divine fallacy. Like, I can't understand how it happened, so I'm going to attribute it to a higher power or a lower power. Like, we can't explain this, but it must be because of the revelation of the method of the dark occultists. So these are bad explanations that don't take into account the extent of media fakery. In fact, it's very blinkered in many ways. So what we have been consistently pointing out isn't a theory. Predictive programming, concurrent programming, these are things that we consistently observe. They're an aspect of media because entertainment is entrained to the news. Again, entertainment and the news are entrained. Systemic fakery always has been. Why? Because they're writing history in advance. They're writing history, executing on the world stage, but they control history. And if you don't believe me, look up a textbook and check out all the major events of the last 50 years, and you'll see that every one of them in the textbook appears as it did on TV, not the way it really happened. It doesn't account for fakery. So we've already made the case that history is bent, that the worldview that we all share has therefore been distorted. And the distorters do it day by day with fake news that they get away with. PSYOPs, influence operations, lies, and propaganda. So this is just a fact of life. What we're pointing out is not a hypothetical. It's not a theory. We don't rely on higher powers, lower powers, dark magic, or AI gods to explain what we see on the nightly news because we're not confused. And the Mandela effect people are confused. The simulation theory people are ignoring the evidence that points to man as the cause for everything they attribute to something higher than man. I mean, these things have been roundly debunked. This think tank is cutting edge. And we're not doomsday prophets making weak claims by cherry picking. I just watched The Mountainhead. And I'm like, watch, this movie's going to be one of these films, and we're living in it right now. When I saw Trump and Musk breaking up, and then the riots picking up, I'm like, okay, Mountainhead. Girl says, movies and TV are simulation. Yeah, the best you could say is this. The map is not the territory. We all do have a simulation in our head. So your worldview is your sim. What is your worldview? It's your perspective of the world informed by your education, your experience, your training, your situational awareness, and your perceptions, and your psychoepistemology. How do you process information? Most people process news passively. That is, they see it on the news and they process it as though it's actually valid. They don't, let me suspend judgment and not believe the news for a few days. No, we're the only ones that do that. But what media does is it creates a simulation. It creates a worldview that is, for all intents and purposes, a fictional universe. And if you're in it, you're in a sim. But that in no way means that reality is a sim. So here's the glitch. This is what catches the simulation people, is they see fakery on the news. They see all these coincidences that have to be more than coincidence. But since they haven't figured out that this is being done by propagandists on Earth, they default to reality's fake. News is fake. News is therefore an indicator of what's out there, so reality's fake. That's a big leap. And that leap is one they want you to take, because that makes you a perfect resident in this open air global asylum. Because it is. It's a big madhouse. It's the bread and circuses. And the irony here is that the self-described woke are the deepest ones in the simulation, because the simulation is most intense when you're having a nightmare. Like when they introduce a weapon of mass destruction, they send out a mass panic. That's when the simulation becomes the most real. That's when the alternate reality game becomes part of your real life, not just your mental concept of the world and what you think is happening in the world, but now you're participating in it. 2020, classic example. The panic after any major psyop, after any shooting, lockdowns. These are all parts of the play where you get dragged into it, even though you're just the audience. Busy 56. Anyone seeing Wes Anderson's new movie, The Phoenician Scheme? I'll have to watch it. I need to rewatch his Asteroid City. 777 says, never banned a single person here. Often forgot about my wrench. We haven't needed to. You know, we've pretty much cleared out the trolls. The non-serious types. I mean, I don't mind trolls. I don't mind people who disagree. It's not my... I don't really care. Oh, I did. Someone in the chat has been banned. I think it's Mike D. The reason why I grabbed the wrench was he was spamming some stuff that I thought was unflattering, possibly insulting about another content creator. And, you know, there's enough mind war in the world. There's enough smear campaigns. We're all targets of it for thoughts and all this. And, you know, I don't think that we should attack our content creators on anything other than their content. Who's Gary? Garrow, Jurassic Liars. And, you know, the name of the actress who plays the prophet that warns everybody about the Space Needle disaster? Her name is Gabrielle Roseanne, and she goes by Gayro. Like, that's very, very conspicuous. Hey, looks like Twitter's not operating properly here. Again, if you just got here, the Space Needle cam is down. It says the Pano cam is getting much needed maintenance and love right now. We'll try to get it back on top of the Space Needle as soon as possible. Okay, finally, I got the video to play. Here is National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, who looks like the villain in the movie that just came out. Again, this is all part of the same collection of propaganda films. Fantastic Four, Final Destination, Thunderbolts, and all have the same essential theme here. Well, here is Tulsi Gabbard.
Condemning survivors to agonizing deaths or lifelong suffering. A nuclear winter could follow, with smoke and ash completely blocking the sun, plunging the world into darkness and cold, killing crops and starving billions. Acid rain would scar the earth, wiping out entire ecosystems. This isn't some made-up science fiction story. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, political elite and warmongers are...
So again, for coincidence theorists, or people who don't know about the metascript, who don't know about how history is fabricated monolithically, who don't know that there's a media ecosystem, which is a closed informational system, how do you explain this? 6/11, talk of nukes, evacuations, Tulsi Gabbard coming out specifically talking about this, and now let's add the other element here. If you haven't subscribed to my Substack, I have a blog where I tend to cover a lot of the predictive programming stuff. It's called timosmond.substack.com. One second here. It's a little slow at the moment. But my latest article addresses the conspicuous resemblance between Tulsi Gabbard and this character in The Thunderbolts. I'm just going to pull it up on my phone and I'll show it on the screen. For some reason it's not opening here, no big deal. But the fact that we're on the brink of annihilation, like this story coming out right now on the same day that the Space Needle, the Space Needle has shut off their camera, and then the ISS tracking site is down. Again, all these things, if you ask me, are indicative of a slow build to something. Just waiting for my slow internet connection here. Let's go through your comments. Kevin Mooring says, Civil War, right on cue. I love this Netflix realm. You know, Adam Green, I was just listening to this podcast, this video broadcast, and he was talking about the movie Civil War and how it has Kamala Harris, well, not Kamala, it has a Trump-like character. And the Civil War, the movie, is the same guy who wrote 28 Days Later. So you have the rage virus scenario built into it. But Civil War is media-driven rage, you know, right-wing. And it has a Trump-like character in the White House, and they have to go after him. And they have a black woman soldier kill him at the end. And it's 100% like Trump in the office being taken out by Kamala. Cygirl says, Tulsi is really getting to the scaremongering. Does she buy into it herself? No, this is not just scaremongering. This is building history. Tulsi Gabbard, Hiroshima, and the Thunderbolts. So here you have, in MCU's, that's Marvel Comic Universe's Thunderbolts, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. So she's Valentina. She's OXE, this is an organization. She runs their Sentry program, a clandestine experiment to create a new weapon. So I'm going to put her face on the screen and then tell me she doesn't look like Tulsi Gabbard. You see that conspicuous gray streak? And as pointed out here by Cubstar, the bad guy in the Thunderbolts that unleashes the Sentry, who is a void that blacks out New York. Here's Gabbard warns of nuclear holocaust in ominous social media video. The director of national intelligence says the world's closer to the brink of annihilation than ever before. So now we're suddenly on the brink of nuclear annihilation. And if you look at my blog post, and this is why I'm pointing this out, say Metascript, you have the same character on the world stage and in the movies, and these messages are overlapping. Copaesthetic says Tulsi just pulled a Rumsfeld. Okay, well look, it's getting close to 5:30. I think what I'm going to do. Yeah, Cygirl, these people, when I reference these people like this green character, I know they're propagandists, but I'm taking their information not as, oh, this is something that's going to happen, but as narrative building. These are propaganda vectors. They're propaganda vectors who supply the content for propaganda mules, the woke, the awakened ones, so they can go spread it to the unawakened. That's how it works. The S just all goes downhill. Okay, well, look, I know that Mike D might be spamming. I can't see him in here, so we're fine. Cygirl says, critical theory is unfairly ridiculed because of its French intellectual roots. Well, the idea here, the way why I'm critical of it, is that it's a frame of reference that you take on that says, I'm oppressed, and the world is divided into oppressors and the oppressed, and therefore the oppressed have a moral high ground. It's rich versus poor, demonizing the rich, eat the rich, kill the rich. It's class envy, class warfare, but it's also the politics of grievance and victimization. So like, I'm an aggrieved person because society is racist and sexist. Well, both sides can say it now. Woke left says society is sexist against women and racist against minorities. Woke right says society is sexist against men and racist against whites. So both sides are claiming racial and sex oppression. Gripers, America First. That's the group that's the most representative of woke right. And I call them gripers because it's all grievance politics. They're incels. Like, we can't have babies because Jews. Like, what? Oh yeah, they got women out of the houses so they could pay taxes, and now they broke up the family, so we can't have kids. Like, the culture's turning them into Barbies, so they don't want men. They just want Ken dolls. They have pretty much set themselves up for perpetual victimhood, and they cry about how we're running out of people, white genocide, and then immigrants are replacing them. Yeah, it's all grievance politics. And by the way, I've been talking about how there's a relationship here between the MAGA ban, Taliban values, and interestingly enough, I was thinking about incels, because the shooters are often these people who don't quite fit in, but the incel, I think, correlates to the suicide bomber. You see, the suicide bomber, sexual purity, they'll get it in heaven after they die for the cause. Incels are often the same, because their enemy's the same. Who's the enemy of the radical terrorist? The great Satan and their corrupt values. You know, women with uncovered hair and different things that are, or the Hollywood Kardashian type exports, cultural exports that are offensive to their moral codes. Well, the alt-right has the same thing. Like, their whole thing is hating westernized women. And the incels are incels because women are corrupt here. So anyway, I'm pointing out that the grievance aspect of it is one of its defining characteristics. Bach Precision says, you're only somebody now if you're a victim. Yeah, exactly. And so the people who are woke are classic, you call them cry bullies, basically, where they use victimhood as an excuse to victimize. That's victim psychology, not the same as academic critical theory. Well, okay, so critical consciousness is the woke state. When you've woken up, what have you woken up to? Critical consciousness. What does that look like? It's when Neo's taken the red pill and he's unplugged from the feed, and Morpheus shows him the real world without the glamour of the Matrix. And it's dismal. That's when he achieved critical consciousness. He was awakened. Now, you might just be a normie, but then one day someone says, oh, by the way, the cops are racist, everything is structurally racist and oppressive and sexist, and the American dream is a big lie, and it's because of systemic oppression worldwide, and Western values and capitalism are going to literally destroy the world because of climate change. Okay, well, if you've awakened to that, now you're woke. Now you're critical of the West and the forces that really control the world. But both sides, the woke, are woke right and woke left, are now in a different frame of mind than they were when they were dreaming. They're having nightmares. Their worldview is darker. It's scarier. If you're a woke conspiracy theorist, look at all the things now that you have to be afraid of. Direct energy weapons, 5G towers, needles. Bach Precision says, great point. One of the reasons young men become jihadists in the Middle East is lack of marriage opportunities because the older men take all the women. Well, I think what we see is this with the far right, the MAGA band right. It's the trad wife ideal. Like, oh, they want a trad wife, which is the woman who stays in the kitchen, has the babies, and doesn't work because it's the trad ideal. So MAGA appeals to this tradition, make America great again, like before civil rights and feminism. And the utopianism of the progressives is this future that says once we get rid of all the stuff from the past, the tradition, then we can have a perfect world. So it's tradition versus progressive, a progressive new world. And that dialectic is a tug of war that is designed to never end. Thank you for feeding the Crackwin, Phil LeBlanc. The IPS appreciates your support and participation. Could not exist without it. So I've been talking about the concept of the media ecosystem and how it explains what people mislabel, or I mean, it's kind of a misnomer to call it predictive programming, because it's way more extensive than stuff in the past in The Simpsons has a vague resemblance to today. No, we're not cherry picking. We're not Texas sharpshooter fallacy employing gematria experts. We're not QAnons reading into every tweet and adding the numbers that they add up to, the letters add up to. No, we're pointing out, like film critics would, the development of a story. And the story that we're analyzing is history. And if you think history is organic and random and not planned, you're not paying attention. And what I term this script is the meta script. And this meta script is internally consistent, and it has certain features that people miss because they don't understand what media really is. So the news media does in fact track with entertainment. Mainstream, big, heavily pushed entertainment bolsters the fake news every time, always has. You know, even going back, JFK assassination is preceded by 2 Frank Sinatra films, Suddenly and The Manchurian Candidate, both of which were watched by Oswald, and some suggested they influenced him. Thank you for feeding the Kraken again, and Ted Stryker came in here with 10 titanium blue wrenches. Make sure you go out on your porch and get your wrench before someone steals it. Peace and Wealth Seeker, Marcel, Angst G, Tony Driscoll, Treble C, Dr. Back Asswords, Psyops Matter, Janky Frames Covers, a Newful have all received Blue Wrench Lodge membership. And if you go to the post section, you'll get a link to get into our Discord. Jamarian May says, is there a time of day when the earthquakes take place? Now, if I was going to make a prediction, like with today, and we're just talking about today, the narrative, how it's all lining up perfectly, especially when you get into the base. The recent reemergence of the base, started by a Pentagon guy. The base is the white nationalist terrorist group with paramilitary training. The base means, rather, the word Al-Qaeda means the base. And it's 6/11, 9/11. Al-Qaeda, the base. You see the mirror? But if I was going to make a prediction, I would say, well, Trump's going to the JFK Center. And there's been this consistent pattern of the head wound assassination theme with the Space Needle thing. Even in the movie, Final Destination, it's a penny, Abe Lincoln, that brings it down. So if I had to guess, I would say it's probably while they're watching that particular play. That would be perfect. And it's a play that revolves around the French Revolution, Les Miserables. You've got French Revolution built into the Paris Olympics with the decapitated Marie Antoinette and the destroyed Statue of Liberty, a lot of nuke stuff all over the Paris Olympics. The opening track by Gojira, their song was about revolution. And the song of the band, Gojira, that's Godzilla. Gojira is the Japanese Godzilla. Godzilla, whose birthday is 11/3, by the way, was designed to be a metaphor for the atom bomb, a beast from the sea, like a kraken. All right, so I'm going through my Twitter feed. We talked about this again. National Intelligence Director warning of a nuke. She looks just like someone from the movie. In Ohio, the Austin Powder industrial explosives factory blew up. 3,000 gallons of nitric acid, evacuating a town, 4,000 square miles of airspace shut down. So the Ohio thing is frequently cited by JL. But in particular here, the Austin Powders. Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, his base is the Space Needle. Kind of an interesting event. Cygirl says Kraken is not Greek but Norse. Well, one thing to consider here is what they do is they do a syncretism, different religions, different myths, and they create these amalgamations. For example, you've got Hunt for Red October about the Russian nuke, right? Well, more recently, Russia announced this nuclear submarine called the Poseidon. Well, you could correlate Godzilla, Poseidon, and Kraken quite easily, especially when you look at how they're used. These are okay. So the Space Needle in Final Destination, the character named Iris, which is very significant, the whole eye thing. So Iris is blindfolded, They take the blindfold off, and she's staring at the needle. But from the bottom, she's looking at it from the top down. At the bottom of the Space Needle is what? A giant crab sculpture coming out of the water. So crab, kraken, again, beast from the sea, nuclear submarine, Poseidon. Then you've got Godzilla. Again, these are symbols. And that's how symbolism works. You replace one thing for something else. And if you have the initiated interpretation, you can understand it. And this is everywhere. Subtext. Filmmakers are always subtle. Like, so for those who say, this has got to be a higher than man power orchestrating these meaningful coincidences. No, it's not. That's the writing process. I just watched a movie called The Barbarian. And it's an ugly movie about this decrepit neighborhood in Detroit where this lady stays at an Airbnb. And in the basement is this hideous creature, which is basically like this mutated, naked old lady with like super strength who does horrible things to people. But in the context of the movie, she's underground, trapped by this thing in a cage. And the Airbnb owner is looking through the suitcase, like, who's here? And sees a copy of Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre. Is it Charlotte Bronte? Jane Eyre is a book about this character who discovers a mad woman locked in the attic. So the story is about this mad woman, but then there's another level to it, because it's about her madness is the result of patriarchal oppression. So now you have an element of she's described as a mad woman because she's not a conformist in a male-dominated society. So is she really a mad woman locked in the attic, or is there something else going on? So I looked at this movie now. I'm like, wait, why did they flash Jane Eyre? There's a reference to the mad woman. Well, if you look into the backstory of the mad woman in this movie, she was driven crazy because of her father and abuse and essentially everything that turned this character in Jane Eyre mad. But even more, the main character in the movie was an obvious sexist male. And the other one too. So like you had these elements that were definitely borrowed from the book, but you only see the book cover for like a quarter of a second. It just flashes on the screen. So you could just ignore it, like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. No, it means everything. It's the key to decoding the entire premise of the movie, where the monster in the movie is actually someone you could be sympathetic for. So when I look at these events on the news or these movies and these little tiny hints, it's like, these aren't tiny hints. The fact that Empire magazine has EMP and it has the Space Needle on it, Fantastic Four, yeah, that's not a minor thing. XG, you saw that movie? Someone told me I had to see it. I generally try to stay focused on movies that relate to what we're talking about. But I also like movies. I was a film studies major before I switched to something else. But at one point, that's kind of how I got into this stuff. I remember the class was essentially watching every Kubrick film and doing deep dives into these things. Cygirl says Godzilla and Mothra were Japanese film creations. Well, Godzilla was born as a way of warning us about the nuke, a metaphor for the nuke, and his birthday of 11/3 interestingly ties into a lot of this stuff because the date of the One World Trade Tower opened was 113, and it relates symbolically to the Space Needle, the Tower of Babel thing. Kevin Mooring says they could claim an outside force attacked the U.S. because of the military here in the States and not at their post, blaming American people, illegal or not, for the event. Well, look, every time there's a major event, you have the mainstream version, the inside job version. Nick Fuentes and his crew will blame Israel. My take is it's going to be domestic violent extremists who got connected to bad people because of the internet, but that they're working with Russia or something like that. But that's Tom Clancy territory. Tom Clancy is one of these prophetic authors who prophesied 9/11. His audiobook, Sum of All Fears, was playing on the space station when 9/11 happened, and they all said, hey, we were just listening to this book, and we saw it happen when we looked out the window. Tom Clancy also did Hunt for Red October, which connects Alec Baldwin, who used to dress up like Trump, and the Rust movie shooting. They said it's only making $217 in ticket sales per theater. I need to go watch that movie. But in that movie, he shoots a guy who has the birthday 6/14, Trump's birthday, the No King's Day protest coming up on that day. And then the other person, Helena Hutchins, who died, a 42-year-old, she died. She was actually from a place in Ukraine relevant to the story Hunt for Red October. So there's some fascinating connections here that connect with this shooting, the date 6/14, Hunt for Red October. Again, reiterating this idea in the chapel, the shooting in the chapel. It reiterates this idea of the West, because it's a Western. And it's all about the West sinking. So interestingly, before Trump shot that guy, before Alec Baldwin shot that guy with Trump's birthday, he had commented on how dressing up like Trump and portraying Trump made him wish for a meteor to hit the White House. And this is all symbolism. The chapel, the White House and Westworld, this symbol of the West as a burning house, or the Titanic, it's symbolism. But it's not meaningless. It's actually bolstering the bigger story. And it's super intricate. What I like about Jurassic Liars' channel is that he brings in the element of dates and birth dates, which are tremendously significant and underscore how integrated these stories are. But if you look at it from an outsider perspective, as in outside of our think tank, you're like, well, there's no way man could do all this. Are you sure? I mean, look how many examples we have of significant birthdays with these characters portraying significant roles that pertain to real-time events. So let's just go with Mark Ruffalo and Harrison Ford. Both of them play a Trump-esque character getting shot at, assassination attempts, movies that came out concurrent with the real event. Harrison Ford, in Captain America, that trailer came out the day before Trump was shot. His birthday is 7/13, Trump's shooting day. Mark Ruffalo, in a film that is filmed 2 years before, but mirrored the Trump shooting, bloody on his cheek, talked about colonizing an all-white planet, in other words, xenophobia, which is what Trump's speech was about when he was shot. And then after he was shot, he gets up, and it's the Luigi-like character that shoots him. He gets up and he demands the cameraman records him so he can pose for the cameras after surviving his assassination attempt. So that's pretty nuanced. Well, Mark Ruffalo, his birthday is 11/22. And that's just scraping the surface. My point is, that's another president representative in the scene that correlated to a real event, and even the actor's birthday tied into it. Another example, Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper dies on JFK's birthday, 5/29. He played a Trump-esque character in the Super Mario Brothers as King Koopa. And Koopa Towers in that film, the Twin Towers are called Koopa Towers, are disintegrated. Another common thing with characters who represent Trump in these various movies is the association with the Twin Towers. Even Back to the Future has plenty of 9/11 predictive foreshadowing with the Twin Pines Mall. Biff Tannen is modeled off of Trump. Now, I'd be curious, what's the birthday of the actor who played Biff Tannen? Kevin Mooring says, Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. That's right. So today's Wednesday, 6/11. So 3/11/2020, pandemic was declared. 3/13, national emergency. 3/16, Black Monday market crash. So that's kind of an interesting alignment here. We're on 6/11, the next 3/11, or 9/11, potentially. And then we have an upcoming Friday the 13th. And we know for a fact 6/14 is going to be a doozy. 1,800 protests, the No Kings. And the king symbolism. Why no king? The subtext of the JFK assassination tied into this idea of the killing of the king, the sacrificial rite described in The Golden Bow, James Fraser. I recently picked up a copy of it. I don't have it here with me at the moment. But so I opened it up to the page about the killing of the king, because this is the source material for James Shelby Downward's King Kill 33. And it's about the death and resurrection of Osiris, who's a grain god associated with corn. So I pick up this book from the Goodwill, And I open it up, and I'm reading about this grain god, this god of the corn, death and resurrection. And as I'm reading about it, I go over to Drudge, and I notice that they're calling Donald Trump Taco to make him mad. And on the cover of Drudge, it has Donald Trump with a crown of taco shells. Corn, tortilla in particular. Like, Corn King reference. Could it be? And, that looks out of context. It's like, well, okay, it's just a funny meme. And I'm suggesting, well, no. Because we have seen this consistent buildup of associating Trump with Kennedy and Trump with Lincoln and Trump as the sacrificial king. Lincoln's visage and Trump's are on the front of the USDA building. Trump is at the Kennedy Center, and I showed this a couple times already. He's at the JFK Center with his hands out like the stigmata. His hands are red, reflecting like the floor or something. The hue is red, where the shadows on his palms are. And right behind him is a giant bust of JFK. So he's got JFK's head where his head is, and his hands out at this is the Kennedy Center where he is at right now as we speak. Ted Stryker says, I'm waiting on my trading cards. Yeah, those arrived today. The trading cards, I got the tracking info. Those arrived. So as soon as I leave here, I'm going to pick those up, package them, and then once I have the initial pre-orders, and I'll say thanks to all of you who made this happen, because you kickstarted the trading cards. The pre-orders essentially paid for 50 sets. I pre-sold 30. So once I ship out those 30, I've got 20 more in my inventory. And every 10 orders, I'm going to just order another set of 50. I'm adding new designs, but it's going to I'm going to keep rolling it forward so we keep new sets of cards coming out, because I'm going to be at an event in October where I will present these cards. It's called Flat Lanta. Chief Crow will be performing there. But I'm going to have a booth for the PSYOP trading cards, and I'm planning on giving a talk based around a slideshow of the cards, using these as talking points and conversation starters. Enoch says, Google Gemini's AI King Fall released this week. And Trump's a Gemini. And Gemini symbolism, twin symbolism, has been very prominent lately. Austin Metcalf, the twin thing. You had the movie Sinners, the twin thing. Then you had the Pope, 88, and Klaus Schwab, 88, exiting the world stage like twins at the same time. Each of them being representatives of, heads of the world, the Vatican or the World Economic Forum. So here's an AI newscast that's fake, but it's going viral because it seems so real. I think it has a Kraken.
This is Dana Brooks reporting live from Ocean View Beach. Just kidding, I'm not real. This is Charlotte Reed reporting live from Clearwater Beach, where an unidentified... Just kidding, I'm not real.
That one's a Kraken. These are going viral. Now, Mountain Head, the movie, is about what happens when generative AI develops to the point where anybody, anywhere, can create something so real it's indistinguishable from a deepfake. Like, there's not, like, usually just count the fingers. If it's got 6 fingers, it's probably a deepfake. 6 toes, whatever, unless it's Kim Kardashian, it's a deepfake. But we've reached that point. We've crossed the point of no return. And now anybody can deepfake anybody. And in the movie, this creates chaos because you have wars, battles, you have fights, you have all kinds of struggles now kicking off because of perceived atrocities. Let's see here. Wilson argues... Oh, well, look at the author. So Biff Tannen, the author, actually designed Biff Tannen off of Trump. And you can see right now we're in the Biff Tannen phase of Trump. Diana says, those auto hoax stickers are a big hit on my water bottle, although they can trigger some low info believers. Most people will probably see them as fun if they don't think it's serious. Depends on the card. The one that makes fun of the Boston bombing victims, so-called victims, might be a little harsh. If you're on a treadmill with your water bottle and it has the PSYOP card with all the people faking the Boston bombing. Penguin Auto Hoaxer says, JL's recent videos are super persuasive. I bought 5 days of food tonight, never know. Yeah, you could just go raid the storage of your local truther friend. They've been buying up storable food items. Like if you're in Austin and you're starving, I'm pretty sure Alex Jones might have something for you. Because he's not going to touch his stash until he's eaten his neighbors first. So who's Marty McFly, says Ryler05. Now, there was a movie that came out about a tightrope walker going between the Twin Towers. I'm going to have to pull that up. But he is... there's another movie that connects Marty McFly's character. I'll have to pull that up. A lot of time travel stuff, which is a common thing. So Donald Trump first appears on the world stage, well, in the entertainment realm, in Trackdown from 1958. And Trackdown 1958, this is 58 years before he's elected. But it was released on May 9th, 1958, and it's this Western show about this con man named Trump who sells this village on a wall. He swindles them, and then he gets arrested. This was noted as being eerily similar to Trump in 2016. But he didn't get arrested until 2023. So how does that work? The predictions in the movie, the content, hadn't all been manifested yet at that point. But then there's another show, Quantum Leap, that came out much later, but it takes place in this show where he's time traveling. So he goes back to May 10th, 1958. So the day after the Trackdown episode, which is called End of the World, the Quantum Leap character goes to the day after that episode, and it opens up where he's a taxi driver. In the back seat is Donald Trump's father, Fred Christ Trump, and a young, 12-year-old Donald Trump. Then, of course, Back to the Future is all about time travel. Biff Tannen gets his hands on a sports almanac that allows him to predict events and get ahead. D's Nada says, just came from LeBon's stream. He should call in. Well, we'll be live again here at 10 p.m. This has been excellent. Just been catching up on all the latest stuff. And look, I didn't listen to John LeBon's take, but he's a synchromystic and doesn't believe in predictive programming or believes it's coincidences from a higher power or unexplained or nothing to pay attention to. And I'm saying no. The programming in the entertainment and the programming in the news are coming from the same source. It's monolithic. We consistently prove this. And what we're pointing out here is that given our experience in this, and that this is an ongoing, never-ending process, at some point the model has to have some predictive capabilities. We talked about this in 2020, which is why on Sunday I said World War III starts on Wednesday. How did we know 3/11/2020 would have significance? How did we predict that? Because we have a predictive model. We've been doing this for some time. And we have been seeing this build up towards some Seattle-based event. And it ties in certain elements. A 9/11ing style event, but domestic. And specifically involving EMP and blackouts, which is a common feature in all of the movies I just referenced. And the iconic symbolic monument that would be taken down is the Space Needle in this scenario. Interestingly, it was designated a historic landmark on 4/19/1999. 4/19 is the Waco Day. 4/19 is Timothy McVeigh's retaliation for Waco Day. McVeigh, of course, was executed 6/11/2001 at the age of 33, just like Trump was shot at 6/11 and 33 seconds, and he kicked off his campaign in Waco as Netflix just released Waco American Apocalypse. When you look at these things holistically, you see these alignments. It's entrained. And they are entraining your dreaming mind, your imagination, the entertainment with the real stuff or the stuff you think is real. Elvis is good says, why nothing happens? Well, I don't know if you've been listening. I would start at the very beginning. And as far as what's happening, plot points, additional intel, saying nothing's happening, I think you weren't listening. Ohio, under evacuation right now, 4,000 square miles of airspace shut down because of the Austin Powder Red Diamond Industrial Explosives Factory just blew up. I mean, that's not a nothing. Then we have Tulsi Gabbard, National Intelligence Director, saying that we've never been closer to nuclear annihilation, and she looks exactly like the villain in the movie Thunderbolts, where her corresponding character Valentina has a blackout weapon. And the Space Needle's Panicam today has been shut down. Says here, we need to do some maintenance. We promise to get it back up on the Space Needle as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the space station tracking website has been turned off as of today. And then we have the growing riots across the country. We have 1,800 riots planned for Saturday for the 250th anniversary of the military/Trump's birthday. It's like, what do you mean when you say nothing has happened? Unless you're a doomsday prophet type person who believes this stuff is real. Because the only stuff that will happen is fake. But what we did say, even yesterday, is that the pattern has been every year you have these developing plot points, just like with 9/11. So for anybody who thinks that we're guessing or this is just a hypothetical, a theory, that we're resting our credibility on this, I'm like, haven't you been paying attention? What did we do leading up to 2020? And what have we done retroactively leading up to 9/11? Like, no, we are looking at media as a monolithic ecosystem. And if you're not, then you're simply not apprised of how things really work. All right, well, we'll be back in 4 hours. So hopefully Seattle gets Oppenheimered. And if it does, all credit goes to the Nolans, Oppenheimer and Fallout. These two individuals are very well represented in the world of predictive programming. Now, let me add one more point before we go. So in Batman Dark Knight Rises, and this is a classic example of predictive programming. In Dark Knight Rises, there's a scene where one character without his mask goes up to Batman and Batman says, "Where's your mask?" And he says, "I'm not afraid. I don't need a mask." And Batman says, "The mask is not for you. It's to protect the people that you love." This is 2012. This is 8 years before Fauci said it. And then he hands him a smoke bomb that looks like a COVID ball, a spiked ball. And he says, "Count down to 5 and throw it." So he takes the spiked ball, counts down from 5 and throws it. And it explodes into a mushroom cloud. So my interpretation of this was 2020, put on the mask, count down from 5, and then the mushroom cloud. And this is, again, 2012. This is before it would have been known that Christopher Nolan was going to direct Oppenheimer. So there's a foreshadowing of the mushroom cloud. And again, hinting at, I think, 2025. And this is before Jonathan Nolan did Fallout and Westworld, which also has the season finale and EMP, Space Needle stuff. I mean, these same programmers are putting the same messages in all their movies. Jennifer Reeves says, "I hear there's a new trailer out for a movie called Nuked." Well, I hope to see you all back here in 4 hours. And the reason I'm doing this is we're trying to be consistent. And if you're going to have a theoretical model, you should be willing to test it and make claims and justify your claims and observe the accuracy. And if they're wrong, like we have made a point in recent years to look at doomsday prophets with gematria calculators, and we recognize that their frame of reference is purely based on what you would call the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. But they don't have the full picture. They don't know the events are fake. They don't have the off-world stage perspective. So I'll check out some of the trailers you all mentioned. We're living in Mountain Head, Thunderbolt, Final Destination, and everything on Netflix at the moment. And who knows what else, but I'm looking at what's the next plot twist. You know, what is the next major Illuminati playing card? So we shall see. This is Allergic to Bullshit featuring Lean Dion, Fepe Akbar. I'll see you all in a few hours. Sign up for the newsletter to get the notifications.
Fuck with your deception, keep it real, that's a profession. Like the whole world is pretending, found the truth around the penguin. Get a gang on with a blessing, all the other gang are stressing. RPSC on a nesting, only real one's gonna get this. Fake ones only accept this, they can miss the message. Timbuktu got bodies, yeah, find them in our records. Auto host and message, squad are represented. Killing you with knowledge, yeah, the uppers getting better. Oh, you're so effective, cause we're so effective. Let go of your worries, yeah, the whole thing is a setup. We got it and we get it, offering refreshment. Level up your conscience, yeah, it's honestly the essence. This wave is uncontainable, facts are undebatable. You lanes are unrelatable, give a fuck about saving you. We could keep on playing you, you just keep complaining too. Game is unescapable, unless you're with the gang or no. Messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin, 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 fucking with the penguins, yeah, with the penguins. I'm coming with a vengeance, trying to make you come to your senses. Forget the general consensus, just pay attention. The rules to have paid with good intentions. I'm clenching, my back wrenching, representing only the most superior, independent media. We got that real shit fucking encyclopedia. We're bringing an end to this mass hysteria. They wanna know why it's so serious, cause you must be delirious. If you're still believing stuff, get a grip and show some evidence for your own claims. We don't play no games, we stay relentless, exposing those events. With the IPS are making an entrance, busting doors down, cause now's the time for interventions. Did I mention we're affecting so many men across the spectrum? We stand out from the crowd, we don't blend in. Steady gaining tremendous momentum, there's nothing close resembling. Check the emblem, it's a penguin, not a gremlin. Just letting you know you're on an infinite plane, it's never bending. We strike like 10 pin, killing all fears and breaking the tension. Gotta know the hopes army, digging deep in the trenches. Come and join in, be adventurous. Quit being so sensitive, forget the censorship, we ain't telling fibs. Messing with the penguin, we're messing with the penguin. You're messing with the